समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Rahul Gandhi's vote chori charge has erupted now into a major battle with the Election Commission. The opposition has been protesting, of course, around the revision of rolls in Bihar. But now, after a detailed presentation by Rahul Gandhi on what he has alleged is vote chori, the political war has in fact escalated. How do we separate the rhetoric from the hard facts? Joining us now is our newsmaker today, Ashok Lavasa is with us. Mr. Lavasa has, of course, been an election commissioner. He's been part of India's main body that oversees elections. And if anyone knows what this entire controversy is about, it is him and people like him. Thank you, sir, for your time today. I want to start by asking you to talk about this rather unseemly battle between the leader of the opposition and the Election Commission. After Rahul Gandhi did a detailed presentation where he alleged a series of anomalies in the voter list, he was focusing on one assembly segment in Karnataka, including duplicate voters, several voters registered to one single address, and examples like that. The Election Commission insisted that he must put this all down in a sworn affidavit. He said, "My word should be enough. I'm a member of parliament. I swear by the constitution in parliament. That is enough." If you were in the Election Commission still serving today and this had happened, would you have insisted on a sworn affidavit?
Thank you very much, Barkha, for having me. So coming straight to your question, I think the presentation that was made, it contained enough details for the Election Commission to carry out an immediate investigation, which I think they should have done. And the insistence of an affidavit from the complainant, I think, is rather unnecessary. Technically, they might have a point of view. I'm not disputing that. But I think the clause which they have quoted in that communication strictly doesn't apply. In any case, even if it does, I think the analysis that was presented was based supposedly on the data of the Election Commission. And any complaint of this nature, whether it comes from a political person or any other individual, I think it warrants an immediate action on the part of the Election Commission.
Who should have, well, the Election Commission hasn't chosen that approach yet. It's instead sent a notice to Mr. Gandhi, and perhaps they might still announce an investigation. But if they were to announce the investigation, who would be the arbiter to decide whether what Mr. Gandhi is saying is true or not? That there are anomalies is obvious in the EC's own data. Anybody can go to the EC's data and they will find, for example, in Karnataka, there are examples of scores of voters registered to a single address, right? Just to take that as an example. But that doesn't necessarily mean that all of them voted. And therefore there are many questions that still remain. And even if they did vote, it doesn't mean that all of them voted against the Congress. So I'm just qualifying all of this and asking you, how does somebody determine the veracity of these allegations, and who should be that somebody?
Okay, so first of all, let's get this out of the way. Whether the entries contained in the electoral roll are of people who actually voted, I think the two things should be separated, because I don't think that any outsider has access to the data of actual voters. And that is why the people whose name exists in the electoral roll are called electors, and those who actually exercise their right are called voters. So that distinction must be made. It is possible for political parties, through their agents which are deployed outside polling booths, to keep an account of the slips that they issue or even the roll call that they might take. But that cannot be treated as an authentic data of the number of people who exercise their vote. So I think that linking the two may not be based on verifiable facts. That is number one. But number two is, Barkha, it is like saying that, let's say if the water reservoir of your colony is contaminated, and if somebody files a complaint, would you say that I will carry out an inquiry only if I know how many people have actually consumed that water? So the allegation and the complaint is specifically against the quality or the aberrations, discrepancies in the electoral roll. And that allegation is enough to warrant an investigation. Now, as far as your question about who should carry out this investigation, I think we need to understand one thing, that Election Commission always has maintained the view that it is a monitor, it is a supervisor. And we all know that Election Commission has about 500 permanent people on its rolls, and all the other machinery that it utilizes belongs to either the state government or the government of India. So that machinery actually carries out the work, whether it is of electoral roll registration or of conducting elections. The Election Commission supervises their work. So it should not assume that the work which they are carrying out is being done by them. It is done on their behalf. And it is always possible that people have made mistakes deliberately, not deliberately, that only investigations can prove. So I think every complaint should alert the Election Commission. In fact, it has had a track record of taking notice of even media reports. And if such large-scale aberrations are pointed out, even if it comes from media or from anonymous sources, it is questioning the validity of a document which belongs to the Election Commission. And therefore, I think it is their duty, it's their responsibility to carry out an investigation itself. Now, you said who should carry out the investigation. In the past, Election Commission would carry out the investigation itself through officers it might employ, whether from that state, from outside, from anywhere. But a lot of credibility was attached to the inquiry done by the ECI, and it would disclose the report only after it satisfies itself. So ECI is fully competent to utilize the services of anyone it wants to carry out an audit or an inquiry into the allegation.
So what I'm hearing you say is that it's not that relevant how or if these anomalies, these mistakes impacted the outcome of the election. The allegations themselves of falsified information or potentially incorrect information or suspicious information should warrant an investigation, because in other circumstances, the Election Commission is so more to take a note of, let's say, a news report. So if you were serving in the EC today, you would have ordered an investigation. You would not have insisted on a sworn affidavit. And you are also saying, importantly, that the ECI can deploy whosoever it needs to conduct this investigation. Now, okay. Now, when Mr. Gandhi has made the point that 1 lakh plus dubious voters, some of the examples that have been put forward, as I mentioned, are scores of people registered to a single address. You are saying it doesn't matter if journalists have gone to those areas, people have found that they're, migrant-heavy neighborhoods, the people registered there no longer live there, they may have moved on, they may have been there in a phase, they may or may not have voted. All of that is not the point. The point is, if somebody is saying to you, there's one house and 80 voters, it is the job of the EC to cross-check and verify that all is in order.
See, let's not forget that purification of electoral rolls is a priority of the Election Commission itself. Political parties and other stakeholders have taken it up with the Commission, but in the past and always, ECI has been very conscious about the quality of its electoral roll. The deduplication exercise, for example, which has been conducted now almost for the last 15 years, has been done by ECI on its own. Yes, people did point out, but ECI was conscious that in a country as vast as ours, with the kind of movement that people undertake, it is possible for people to register themselves in more than one place. And it did not bother the ECI whether it was the responsibility of the voter or the elector himself or herself to ensure that she is not registered in more than one place. But
Yeah.
ECI has been indulgent enough, and it has never prosecuted anyone for enrolling in more than one place, but employed software, more sophisticated software with the passage of time, to weed out these duplicate entries. And let's not forget that the CEC himself, when he took over, the present CEC, he did announce that he will purify the electoral rolls. And that response was in response to a complaint filed by the Chief Minister of West Bengal, where she said that more than one people have the same epic number. So even that is an aberration, which ECI has consciously undertaken to rectify.
So one of the arguments that has come up politically in the aftermath of Mr. Gandhi's press briefing is the ruling party saying, well, actually, here is reason to conduct a revision of rolls nationwide. And that takes us to the SIR, the revision of rolls controversy, the special intensive revision of rolls that is taking place in Bihar. The argument being that if you speak to the BJP in Karnataka, their politicians will say, maybe what Mr. Gandhi is saying has happened, but it's happening in our constituencies also. So what we actually need is a countrywide revision of rolls. So why is the opposition objecting to what's taking place in Bihar? I first want your perspective on that exercise. The Supreme Court urged the Election Commission to accept the Aadhaar, the voter ID cards, the ration card as evidence of identity. The EC did not agree. Let's talk about the big picture of what's happening in Bihar, which is the next election.
Well, first of all, the documents which the Supreme Court asked the Election Commission to consider, they were not proofs of citizenship. And Election Commission, in its SIR purposes which it stated, said that we want to weed out people who are not eligible. So the eligible criteria only resides around three things. One is citizenship, the other is you're less than 18 years of age, and the third is if you have been disqualified. So in the past, the Election Commission always has asked a first-time voter to undertake in the application that he is a citizen of India. And let's not forget that even the question of having been disqualified otherwise is left open. It is presumed that if you don't know that a person is disqualified, you accept that he is qualified to be a voter. So he undertakes that he is a citizen, she is a citizen, and he or she is supposed to provide proof of his date of birth, provide proof of the place of residence, and documents about identity. So the citizenship question, which has been undertaken this time, I think those documents are not strictly relevant to citizenship. And that's the response that ECI has given. But your larger question about the need for conducting a special intensive revision, I think nobody can dispute the right and the responsibility of the ECI to carry out an intensive revision, a summary revision, whatever revision it thinks is necessary. But I think the question is, how do you do it? Are the people prepared for such an exercise? What are the consequences of the exercise that you are undertaking? And is your machinery fully prepared? Are the people who are going to be affected fully prepared? Because let's not forget, we are dealing with people who have been on the electoral roll for many years. Some of them could have been for 50, 60 years. Now, nobody is saying that roll should not be rectified if there are errors. Nobody is saying that if there is an ineligible person, she or he should not be weeded out. Of course, there are provisions available in the existing rules and the act to weed out such entries. But here what is happening, Barkha, is that I'll give you a theoretical and an extreme example. If you were a voter registered in the first electoral roll in 1951, and if you're alive today, you would be about 95 years old, right? Because the age at that time was 21. Now you have a procedure by which if that person does not submit the enumeration form, he or she is excluded. So a clerical procedure which dictates that every elector should sign a form and submit it to the Election Commission becomes more important than his or her constitutional right, which he might have exercised for many years. So I think the way this procedure has been designed creates some questions. And even if legally it can be defended, the point is whether it is fair to the people.
And you have called for a pause in your column in Indian Express.
Yes, I do feel that, you see, there is already an electoral roll which Election Commission notified as late as January of this year. And under the existing rules, there are enough provisions for you to delete or add or correct entries on an ongoing basis. Nobody stops the machinery from doing that. So I think if this intensive exercise is to be undertaken, for example, let's say the other Election Commission has announced that they're going to do this exercise throughout the country.
Yeah.
Right? In other states, it's not causing so much anxiety today. It might cause later.
Because there's no imminent election.
Exactly. So that is the point. So today, when you conduct an exercise which affects about 7.9 crore electors, and they risk losing their right to vote, it seems a little unfair and hurried. And that is why I think even if you put a pause to this exercise, restore the electoral roll which existed as of January or as of June 24th, and then do whatever updation you are required to do as your rules allow till the day of filing of nomination as per rules. So that can serve you in good stead. I think Election Commission procedures have enough checks to guard people from voting more than once, or to make sure that people who are dead, they somehow don't become alive and come and vote. So all those checks do exist.
I want to understand from you, sometimes a mistake can be an honest mistake. The mistake is not designed to steal a vote or manipulate an outcome of an election. It can be a mistake made honestly, or because of carelessness, or because of the volume of data that you're dealing with. But certain examples have come into the public domain in the last few days that mystify me. For example, you have a Minta Devi, who was listed as a 124-year-old woman in the rolls. This is after the revision, the draft data published by the EC, and she's actually 35 years old, right? And she is saying, I am angry with the opposition for wearing t-shirts with my face on it without my consent, but I'm also angry with the Election Commission because I am 35 years old. Why have I been listed as a 124-year-old woman? Then from Maharashtra, there is the example of Sushma Gupta. She is a voter with 6 IDs and 6 epic numbers. Then in one district, one tehsil alone in Madhubani, we found that there were 19 voters with a house that says 0 or 00 or 000. Now, what I'm genuinely wanting to ask is, how would such mistakes happen?
So you see what happens, Barkha, is that Election Commission has always been most concerned about protecting the right to vote. And when you do enumeration or when you enlist voters, you do door-to-door survey, you are operating in different cities, different localities, different villages. Unfortunately, we still don't have a very standardized habitation record in our country.
Right.
Not all cities will have standard addresses. So I think from time to time, Election Commission uses its own imagination and devises methodologies which should be credible. But the aim is that you should not exclude somebody because that somebody doesn't have an address.
I understand, but how does somebody have 6 IDs, the same
No,
person?
that of course that is something which needs to be investigated. That, for example, the complaint about 2 people having the same epic number can be a technical glitch,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
But the same person registered in more than one place cannot be a glitch. It's a deliberate, whether that person has done it or someone else has done it, but that appears to be deliberate. So these are the things that need to be cleaned up. And if, as I said, that if somebody is questioned the system that I'm operating, I think I should be alarmed. And I should take serious note of that.
So
Unless, but because you see, a doubt has been created. Rightly or wrongly, a doubt has been created. Now, who will clarify that doubt? Leave the politics aside. Because depending on which side you belong, you will either discard the whole thing or you will endorse it with full force. So I'm not saying that let's look at the politics. But the point is that the allegation that has been made with the kind of graphic details which have been given creates a doubt. Who will clarify that doubt? Who will remove that doubt? And who should be most concerned in removing that doubt? It has to be the custodian of the electoral roll. And unless Election Commission clarifies in as many words that this is what we have done and this is our finding. For example, I think one of the CEOs immediately clarified that the person alleged to have been enrolled in my state, I have checked and I don't find these 2 entries in my electoral roll. So he has come and stated what his roles say. So somebody has to, in the position or in the authority to do it, has to clarify.
Let me ask you this in the end, sir. You are not comfortable with the hurried nature of the revision of rolls in Bihar because there's an election upcoming and the entire emphasis that you place is on the right to vote, which should be as inclusive as possible and not leave behind anybody. But this is a country where there is perennially an election. There is almost always an imminent election. If we agree that there is an overhaul of these roles needed, whether to weed out the duplicates or examine how somebody's age is entered wrong, or why a house says 00, or why any of these anomalies are taking place, any time may be a bad time. So how does one do this?
In theory, what you're saying appears to be right, but when you look at it state by state, the fact that different states might have a different election cycle actually gives you enough elbow room to plan your exercise. And therefore, I feel that, you are cleaning up your role. The role which you already have and the role which has already admitted people. So if I want to clean up my role, I should not do it in a way in which there is a sword hanging on the elector's head that, look, if you don't find a mention here, you're out. And if you have enough time, for example, last time when it was done, I think in 2003, there were no elections around the corner. Even the general elections were originally slated to be in the end of 2004. They were advanced because of certain reasons. And the government dissolved the assembly earlier, the parliament earlier. But the Bihar elections were in 2005. So you had 2 years gap. And even this time, I think if you do the exercise, people have enough. First of all, you have to tell them that, look, this is what we expect from you. Yeah. And we are giving you 3 months time, 4 months time. Please procure all the documents that you may be required to submit. And then you start the exercise, give whatever time the law prescribes, give enough time for people to redress their grievances.
Yeah.
And but Now, even if theoretically it is possible for people to appeal against the order of the ERO, there is an appeal to the district election officer, then there is an appeal to the CEO. But where is the time?
Yeah.
And do you expect the DO, who's actually the deputy commissioner, overburdened with so much of work, with the responsibility of conducting elections? I don't know whether he has the capacity to dispose of all these appeals. So who is going to lose anything if you defer this exercise? And as I said, yes, please carry out whatever checks are required to carry out.
Yeah.
Last time around, I think the methodology adopted was different. But unfortunately, we don't know what that methodology was, because that order doesn't seem to be in the public domain. And I think ECI, what I feel will make people comfortable, they should put that order of 2003 in the public domain to tell them that this is what we did last time, this is what we are doing now, these are the reasons why we are adopting a new procedure. Number one. Number two, even today, which is the 13th of August, we don't know how many people out of 7.24 crore who have signed the enumeration form and given it back, how many of them are yet to submit the documents? Because the uncertainty is about those people. If they are unable to submit the documents, obviously the ERO has no way to determine their eligibility. So that figure should come out in the public domain, that okay, 7.24 people submitted the enumeration form. The issue of 65 lakh who are left out is a separate issue. But even out of those 7.24, how many are people who have just submitted the form without documents? And in the absence of documents, how will the ERO find out whether they are eligible or not?
Right. So I think what I hear you say in the end, Mr. Lavasa, is in the case of Rahul Gandhi's detailed presentation, you feel the allegations by themselves are specific and detailed and they warrant an inquiry instead of the demand for an affidavit. And in Bihar, while the intent and the responsibility indeed of the Election Commission to revise the rules is not in question, the timing and the manner to not leave voters with time to respond, to gather the documents they need, is what you disagree with. I will only say in the end that our democracy, our right to vote, is our most egalitarian feature, and it is sacred, and I think that's what we all have to remember today as Indians. Any last thoughts, sir?
Yeah, you see, I just want to say that all these inputs which are provided by people,
yeah,
they actually help Election Commission to improve their procedures if they are properly analyzed and understood. So there are lessons in this, and Election Commission has always treated people as their friends and as their eyes and ears. In 2019 or so, or 18 probably, they introduced the C Vigil, which was citizens vigilance. So they were supposed to keep an eye on what was happening during the Model Code of Conduct enforcement period. And if they found any aberration anywhere, any violation, they were requested to just take a picture or click a video and upload it. That time, Election Commission did not say that, no, you have to swear an affidavit and then file a complaint. So Election Commission has always used the citizens as its own, team.
Can I ask you though, in the end, how do we ensure that this conversation about what is the best way to have transparency around these questions doesn't become the victim of competitive politics? Because you see, you had this very detailed presentation by Mr. Gandhi, and now you have Anurag Thakur of the BJP hitting back, saying there's been voter fraud or anomalies in Priyanka Gandhi seats, in Akhilesh Yadav seats, and so on. How do we avoid the competitive politics, the noise around that? Because, he too has done a 70 slide presentation, right? This is Anurag Thakur I'm talking about. So there's a Rahul Gandhi detailed presentation sitting on stage doing it. And now there is an Anurag Thakur 70 slide presentation. How do people who do not see this as a BJP versus opposition issue make sense of it?
So you see, Barkha, it's like if you are a referee in a game, you can't allow the players to keep quarreling with each other. I mean, it doesn't help the game at all, and it doesn't help your image as a referee. So you have to step in, you have to call people, talk to them, ask them for their apprehensions, respond to their doubts, and bring all that in the public domain. Because ultimately, the image of the Election Commission or any other institution is not relevant only to the political parties, it is relevant to the people of this country. So they have to interact, they have to say whatever they say in the public domain and say it transparently. So I think the more transparency you introduce, the better it is for the credibility of any organization.
So when you say the referee can't get caught up in this political warfare, now the Congress is saying, for example, it took us 6 months for one assembly segment of Mahadevpur. How did Anurag Thakur get access to data for 6 Lok Sabha constituencies? My fear in this is that as these parties go for each other, the voter who's not a politician is thinking, oh my God, this is now a zero-sum game. Pata hi nahi kya ho raha hai.
Barkha, there is an old saying that a stitch in time saves 9.
Yeah.
And I think all public institutions, they are trained to identify problems even if before they become big and nip it in the bud.
Yeah.
So here is a case where I think because there has been silence for the last so many days, things are just simmering all over the place. The Election Commission has to come out and very clearly, categorically state its position. People may not be happy with that. That's fine. But you are legally empowered and you are responsible for clarifying things, which you should do.
Absolutely. I think what we need is more and more to hear from the Election Commission, because we have now a situation where Anurag Thakur has countered Rahul Gandhi's presentation with a slide presentation of his own. You have the Congress saying, how did they get this data? The BJP saying about the Congress that, they're wrong. And in all this noise, what remains sacred and has to remain sacred is the right to vote for all who are eligible and entitled to vote. And the EC, the Election Commission, is the custodian of that right. So more than politicians, we really do need to hear, I think what you're saying, Ashok Lavasa, is from the Election Commission. Thank you so much, sir. Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Bert.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.